And I think one of the legacies of the pandemic is that people are now extra skeptical of studies and models and anything that the UN says will come true. We were all told about the disastrous public health models. Thankfully, none of them did come true. Well, will disastrous climate models come true? So many things that have set back the climate case. But one bizarre example comes from a place you wouldn't expect. NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies. Typically, that's a place not for uneducated activists like Greta, but rather scholars and scientists. Well, it's become a hotbed of, well, just weirdness. Joining us now to explain how weird it's getting over there with climate activists is our friend Marc Morano. He's the boss of ClimateDepot.com. Marc, great to see you again. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Ezra. Yes, NASA has gone woke, to use that phrase.
Now, I mean, black holes and red dwarfs, these are phrases that regard astronomy. They're not racial comments. There really couldn't be anything less racial than the planets and the solar system and the cosmos. Race is something that happens only on Earth. So how does NASA manage to get itself saying things like this? And I'm quoting here: climate justice and racial justice are the same thing and will never head off climate catastrophe without dismantling white supremacy. That was from Dr. Kate Marvel, who is an associate research scientist at NASA. That was a tweet from her.
Well, what's happened here is identity politics has invaded the climate debate. I gave a talk up in Canada last November, in Western Canada, and I laid out all of the identity politics which had invaded. And now, with the recent riots, you can imagine the climate activists and scientists are just doubling on. Dr. Kate Marvel, NASA with Goddard Space Institute, Goddard Institute of Climate Studies, has come out now full wokeness, and she's derailing white supremacy. She's joining her other NASA colleague, Dr. Peter Kalmus, who says that race justice and climate justice are one and the same. And he says that essentially that plutocracies are colonizing and killing black people are the same ones that colonized and killed our planets. So if you go by what he's saying here, they're basically, this is a war by NASA scientists against the last 150 years of the Industrial Revolution. If they're going after colonization and the whole idea of building a modern civilization, they're really turning NASA into social justice warriors.
It's so strange. Now, I don't know the structure of NASA. I know that it stands for National Aeronautics and Space Administration, I think. It's an agency of the U.S. government, so what I would assume that civil servants are generally nonpartisan. I guess if this is someone speaking on their own time, on their own dime, on their own Twitter feed, I mean, that's fine, I presume. I don't know what the rules are for a nonpartisan civil service at a place like NASA, but it just seems off topic more than anything. I mean, climate.
Well, it's not, to their world, they're saying that essentially the use of fossil fuels is essentially pillaging and raping people of color, and that any kind of mining or fossil fuel extraction is bad for the climate and bad for civilization, therefore. So in their mind, it's a war with many facets, and this whole identity war, the identity politics concept fits right into that. And by the way, NASA, the NASA GIS, which is where Kate Marvel's from, that is where the current head is Dr. Gavin Schmidt. He is openly advocating calls for carbon taxes. He's very political. Prior to him, we had James Hansen, who was arrested half a dozen times protesting global warming as the head of the NASA temperature. So you see how unbiased, allegedly, it is. And he also, James Hansen, the former head of this division at NASA, also endorsed a book suggesting ridding the world of industrial civilization was the way to go. Hansen said the book has it exactly right. We have to turn off the greenhouse gas machine. So it's been a hotbed of radicals in the climate division of NASA. Now, it's so bad that the NASA division that put people on the moon and put us in outer space formed a coalition called The Right Stuff, and they're condemning this NASA division at NASA for basically smearing and besmirching the good science that NASA has done.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.